So we've just primed the airless sprayer full of paint, we've flicked it into spray, and we've got paint now pumping through to our handpiece. So we're ready to spray, and I'll give you a few spraying techniques and a bit of advice on what to do here. So like I explained with the tip, we're using a fine finish low pressure spray tip, which means that we don't want to be operating at too high of a working pressure to atomize the paint, which means essentially achieving a really nice spray pattern. The aim of the game with airless spraying is because it is purely driven by pressure. We want to move fast. It's going to put the paint out pretty thick, so we want to reduce any instances of runs or dripping over time. And the way you can do that is, more often than not, you'll be spraying a 2 or a 3 coat system. Don't be too scared that if you don't get full coverage on the first coat, that's more than okay. You're gonna achieve that coverage on the second coat regardless. So 1, don't move too slow. Make sure you're moving nice and quick. And number 2, there's no air in the system whatsoever, so it is very quick and the paint will be applied quite thick. So we're using a fine finish low pressure 514 tip, which I explained gives a 10-inch fan. It's a 14th hour orifice, which is perfect for water-based acrylics, enamels, primers, undercoats, and all types of paints, mainly for walls, ceilings, fences, and larger surfaces. But today, I'm going to be showing you a few spraying techniques, spraying this door with a water-based enamel, and let's run through it. So you saw on the machine before, we have a pressure dial, and we want to dial in our pressure by starting with the absolute minimum pressure we can get away with to achieve a nice spray fan. So when we're spraying, it's going to create a nice gradient. When I'm spraying as well, I want to keep my wrist perpendicular to the surface. I don't want to fan out by any means, because when we're spraying, there's such a thick coat going on, we want it to dry as flat as possible. So I can either spray right now with my tip going vertically downwards, and I'll show you here. So you can see we have our spray fan. That was at the lowest pressure on the machine. You can see that at the edge of the spray fan, I would say it's quite dusty. It hasn't atomized perfectly, which means when I do my next spray pass, 50% overlap each time, keep my wrist locked, overlap that. You can see it's not a nicely feathered edge. So what I'll do here is, I know that my pressure is still too low. I'm going to increase it to about mid-range, and you'll notice on the pressure dial on our 390 PC, there's 3 color ranges. There's gray, which is low pressure for priming, which I saw at the start of the video. There's the green band, which suggests to use the fine finish and low pressure tips, which goes from a low to a medium pressure. And then there's the blue band, which is our standard grey coat tips, which you will not be using with this higher, and they go from a higher pressure band. As I said before, we don't want to be spraying at too high of a pressure, because sometimes it doesn't put out any more product, it's no faster, it doesn't achieve a better finish, and you actually lose more paint in overspray. So we want to keep our pressure nice and low to reduce our overspray, but we want to be at a high enough pressure where I'm getting a nice fan that atomizes. So let's adjust our pressure and we'll spray again. So I've adjusted our pressure now to about midway through the green band, which, if I look at my pressure dial, is about 1400 to 1500 psi. Pressure won't be exact every single time, as our paint differs in thickness, also the temperature of the day, the hose length we're running, the different type of tip we're running, the different spec of the pump we're running. So just keep in mind, follow this process every time by starting with the lowest pressure and slowly working your way up there until you're happy with the result. So next thing, we're going to spray over again. And you can see that we have a much sharper edge now, which is awesome. It's also feathering out, which now when I overlap by 50%, we have a much better atomization. That's going to overlap perfectly. So if I'm spraying a wall, if I'm spraying a ceiling, weatherboards, it's all going to blend in great. We have no roller nap, or we have no brush stroke finish in this spray pattern, which means it's perfect. Now, if I wanted to spray the opposite direction, all I do is put my gun lock on so I don't accidentally spray myself, and I rotate the guard sideways. That might be useful if you're spraying a weatherboard home. Now I can spray side to side, which is ideal. So that's how you dial in your spray pressure. That's the basic technique for spraying. So now let's hit this door and I'll show you all of that in action. Again, remembering we're working at a pressure that's not too high. We're going to move nice and fast. I'm going to keep my wrist locked. I'm going to overlap by 50% each time, and I'm not going to be too conscious to get full coverage on the first coat. I can always hit it again on the second coat. So let's spray this door. The technique I'm going to use is I'm going to start off my substrate at the top of where I've masked up. I'm going to trigger on hold my finger down and I'm going to release at the bottom as well where I've got masking paper. You don't want to release on and off the trigger onto your actual substrate of what you're painting. Sometimes that can increase the chances of a spit from the gun or something like that. Again, if my tip blocks for whatever reason while I'm spraying, we'll see if it happens. I'll show you how to get rid of a spray tip clog if it happens throughout this spray pattern. So first, let's put our gun trigger lock on. I'm going to rotate to spray this vertically. Again, I'm going to spray about 30 centimeters from the surface, which we recommend. I'm going to keep my wrist locked. I'm going to move with the spray fan, and I'm going to paint this door quite fast because I don't want to get too heavy of a coat for my first pattern. So first we'll hit the edge, releasing off, and then what I'll do is I'll start on again, head upwards, 50% overlap each time. When you come to details like this where you've masked up, you can either cut in around it or continue to spray. So I'll start off again, trigger on, trigger off, trigger back on, and overlapping 50% each time. I'm keeping my wrist locked. I have my left hand on the hose here for a bit of stability. The gun will swivel, which is a really nice feature. There you go. So that's our coat sprayed now. Again, I moved relatively quickly. If you look closely now at the wet finish on the door, that's where I'll straight away inspect at an angle if I have any drips or runs. If you do, don't freak out. Either let it dry, give it a light sand, or you have a little mini nap and you can just slightly roll that out. Do keep in mind that will change the texture of your finish. I'm gonna let this dry now. I'm gonna hit a second coat. Let's show you how to unclog a spray tip clog right now. So if my tip clogs while I'm spraying, don't freak out, it's no big deal. All you need to do is get your spray gun, reverse the tip by turning it around the other way. That's gonna change it from a fan to a straight stream. Here's our waste power from earlier. What we're gonna do, give it a few squirts to unclog it, rotate it around again, and then we'll be fine to continue spraying. Okay, so we're back, we're doing second coat. I'm giving you a bit of a wider angle so you can see how I'm starting off the substrate, triggering on, and then triggering off again at the bottom of the substrate or the door that we're spraying. So let's get right to it. Let's spray. As you can see, because it's second coat now, I don't need it to apply anywhere near as thick. So I'm moving pretty quick. And again, you don't want the second coat to be really slow and put in a lot of product. You want it to be pretty fast. Get it on there, a nice mist coat. And now this is second coat fully finished. We're going to show you how to clean up the gun, get everything stored away, and get this 390 back to Smart Hire so you can hire it again for another weekend.